Hello everyone and welcome back to LewisFiction and welcome to Rewriting Spider-Man Homecoming. Now just first, a disclaimer, if you have not watched my Rewriting Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War, make sure to go back and watch that as an introductory part for this one, because we do make a few changes in that video to set up for the rewrite of this film. But if you have managed to see that, then make sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy my rewrite of Spider-Man Homecoming. Just like the actual Spider-Man Homecoming, we kick off the film with a flashback to Adrian Toomes recovering some of the tech from the Battle of New York. This scene will relatively stay the same, however there is one minor change. One of the people working under Toomes is none other than Ben Parker. Ben and Adrian are seen to be best friends in this clip, stating that they go way back. This is up until Damage Control swoop in and relieve them of their duties. Adrian lashes out at one of the Damage Control men before Ben holds him back, telling him to stop and take the moral high ground. If you are confused as to why I've included Ben Parker in this flashback and as Adrian Toomes' friend, then keep watching because this becomes very important later on down the line. And with that, we fade into the title card and then back into Peter filming himself as Spider-Man at the Civil War airport battle. However, this doesn't lead straight back into him being with Tony Stark like it does in the actual movie. It leads straight into his high school class as we cut to Peter sitting at a desk, watching back the footage, smiling to himself. He is uploading the footage to YouTube until he is called out by the teacher for being distracted. I think we're all aware that Peter was going to keep the suit, and I don't think there's any need for there to be a segment at the start of the movie showing us this. But I would rather take some time to explore more about Peter's vlogging. As we know in the comics, Peter is a photographer, and I think a natural evolution of this is him becoming a vlogger in a modern day. Homecoming slightly tapped into this idea, but as the movie went on and the franchise evolved, this idea was slowly faded out. However, I would really like to expand upon this more, and Peter having his own YouTube channel as Spider-Man, exploring his creativity as an individual. I'm mentioning this here, but this will be a constant theme throughout the movie, with Peter filming himself during battles. Obviously not the serious ones, but the minor excursions that you'll do as Spider-Man. As the school day goes on, we're introduced to all the classic tropes. Peter is good at science, he's on the debate team with Liz, Ned, Flash, Betty, and Cindy, and then there's his best friend, who is MJ? Yep, that's right, Peter's best friend in this version of Homecoming will be MJ instead of Ned. The one issue that I do have with Homecoming and the Home trilogy in general that really invokes this choice that I've made is that they don't spend enough time with some of the significant people in Peter's life, like Ned and MJ, on an individual basis, but rather use most of them as two-dimensional side pieces, which more than not allow Peter to bounce off them and to carry the plot forward. No Way Home kind of fixed this issue, with Ned and MJ having mini character arcs and progression, but I wanted to implement this from the start because I felt like their characters were some of the weaker parts of Spider-Man Homecoming. So instead of having to focus on the two of them having important roles in Peter's life, I'm going to implement this from the start and just have MJ be the primary person that is Peter's friend. And by making Peter and MJ best friends from the start, by sort of adapting the relationship that they had in the Ultimate Comics, for example, this way we also get to learn more about MJ as a character and her background. As we will come to learn, MJ and Peter have gotten close with each other after the death of Peter's uncle, who in this version of the film will be fully mentioned by name. Not just by Peter, but by surrounding characters in the film as well. And as it also turns out, MJ also lives with her aunt as well as her sole provider. This is because her mother died and her father was sent to prison. MJ and Peter both share a mutual bond with each other on that level. However, at this moment in time, it will be purely platonic, although there will be hints and signs that maybe at some point there could be something on the horizon, maybe there are some feelings there, but at this moment in time, it's more of a running joke which could be quite funny throughout the film, where Aunt May will constantly tease them, telling them that they should date, and Peter will find this disturbing and quite awkward. But either way, there are still some hints throughout this film that potentially there could be something more there. However, one thing that we won't change about the film when it comes to love interests is Liz Allen. I really like Liz in Homecoming, and this portion of the story can stay the same. However, in this version of the movie, we will also use Liz as a way to see into MJ's true feelings for Peter, which won't be outright explored as I said, but it will also be hints early on that potentially there might be something more there. But what is the reason for their relationship staying the same throughout this entire film? Well, it comes down to one simple reason. Peter is unwilling to tell her that he's Spider-Man. So any progress that MJ makes to open up about how she really feels about him will be completely turned down by the fact that Peter just can't be around enough for her. Peter will feel a sense of guilt because of this, but Spider-Man does come first. This will be a constant theme throughout the film and ties into Peter's overall story. And this segues us nicely into what Peter's story will be throughout this film. In this version of Homecoming, there will be more of an emphasis on the idea that Peter is excited about the Stark tech that he's inherited, not because he wants to be an Avenger, but because he thinks it'll allow him to save more people. As we mentioned earlier, Uncle Ben will be a massive shadow looming over this film, and the idea that great power comes great responsibility will still be fresh in Peter's mind. Peter will be under the impression that no matter what happens to Peter Parker or his reputation, Spider-Man saving people must always come first. Which, as I mentioned, also ties into the reason as to why his relationship with MJ never goes any further than just friends during the runtime. However, as Peter constantly starts to focus more and more on being Spider-Man, pushing himself to the absolute limit, his friends, and even more Aunt May, will start to notice his absences. Peter will also develop a complex during this time and will be way in over his head, thinking that with this new Stark tech that he's practically untouchable. And this is when he gets humbled and we are introduced to the Vulture. The Vulture and Spider-Man will fight after Peter tracks down a weapons deal between Aaron Davis and Herman Schultz. The Vulture will get involved to deter Spider-Man. However, Peter, thinking that he has what it takes to take on someone as powerful as the Vulture, will be way over the top and will end up getting his behind handed to him. A similar scene to the actual movie will play out, with Peter falling into the river and getting rescued by Iron Man. Tony will tell him not to go after the Vulture again, or else he'll have to take away the suit, directly threatening Peter. However, Peter's justification is that after Civil War, the Avengers are few and far between, since most of them are on the run or have been arrested. And after the death of Uncle Ben, Peter isn't going to sit by when the Vulture and these weapons could be taking innocent lives, just like his uncles. The movie will then play out similar from here up until the ferry scene. Peter is tracking the Vulture, Aunt May gets more and more worried about Peter, since Uncle Ben only just passed, and MJ becomes increasingly more frustrated with Peter avoiding her. And then the ferry scene happens, and this is where everything all boils over. This is where everything comes to a breaking point. Peter tracks Adrian to the ferry, but this time, Peter is overthinking everything. We get a scene where Peter contemplates whether he's good enough to even intervene. After all, the Vulture beat him quite convincingly before, and Tony Stark even told him not to go after him. Everyone doubts him, and now Peter is starting to doubt himself. But Peter decides to still go for it. However, it's very clear that he's overthinking every little thing that he does. Because of this, the ferry of course ends up splitting in two, and the Vulture ends up getting away. Only the likes of Matt Gargan and a few other henchmen are detained. Iron Man ends up swooping in, just like in the actual movie, and saves the day, and then ends up berating Peter for disobeying him. Peter will argue back, saying that he didn't become Spider-Man to sit back and let innocent lives be at risk, and Tony will step out of his suit, telling him because of him, innocent lives were at risk. He tells him he needs the suit back because he clearly isn't ready. Peter will tear up, saying that he can't save people if he doesn't have the suit. Tony will say something along the lines of the actual quote from the movie, but more of an emphasis on the fact that Peter has to prove that he can be Spider-Man on his own. Spider-Man isn't about the suit. Spider-Man is about him. Tony takes the suit and Peter returns to Aunt May, and she's absolutely furious. She tells him that Ben just died and he's out there past curfew. How could he do this to her? He knows that she's so worried. He knows that she's mourning. Peter apologizes to her, but May says it isn't good enough. Something needs to change. And Peter will sit all alone in his room and looks towards his homemade suit from Civil War, and then to a picture of him and his Uncle Ben, telling him he's failed and that he's sorry. We then enter the latter half of the film, which will put Peter under pressure to perform without any special suit or tech. However, luckily for Peter, the Vulture goes into hiding for a while, and there seems to be no sign of him for a couple of weeks. And while Peter is constantly conscious about his next move, it also allows for more time for Peter Parker stuff to happen as well. The debate team wins the competition, and he even asks Liz for a date. This leads us up to the big reveal scene from the actual film, where Peter goes to Liz's house to be greeted by none other than Adrian Toomes, who Peter knows as the Vulture. However, there is a second twist. Not only will Peter recognize Toomes, which makes this scene as tense as it actually is in the movie, but Toomes will recognize Peter. This is the second big twist of this scene. Toomes will say that he was a friend of his uncle's and that he's sorry for his passing. This will create some mutual respect between the two of them. The scene then plays out the same from there, as on their car ride, Toomes uncovers that Peter is Spider-Man. However, Toomes knowing Ben Parker adds a brand new dynamic to this relationship. After Liz leaves the car when Adrian says that he's going to give Peter the dad talk, he doesn't only let him go because he's a kid. Adrian feels remorseful for him after the death of his uncle. This leads leads to Toomes becoming frustrated and even showing a slight bit of vulnerability. He will tell Peter that he loved his uncle with everything he had, and that's why he won't kill him. But if he doesn't stay out of his way, he will have no other choice. He tells him please, practically begs him to stay out of his way. Peter doesn't say a word and steps out of his car as Adrian Toomes drives off into the distance. This is Peter's chance, a chance to catch the man that he's been hunting all this time. And so, the final battle ensues, as Peter denies the request from Tony Stark to step aside, and goes after the Vulture anyway. The film plays out similar up until the encounter with Toomes at his warehouse. This scene has way more stakes than before, with Toomes really not wanting to hurt Peter. A conversation ensues about how Toomes and Ben knew each other. Toomes will say Ben was a good man. Almost too good. When Adrian started his criminal operation, Ben wanted nothing to do with it. Toomes argued that providing for his family was the #1 priority, but Ben's response was that morality was his, and thus they parted ways mutually, with Ben wanting nothing to do with Adrian as the Vulture or any of his criminal empire. As we learn more about the backstory, we put the pieces together, as Spider-Man and the Vulture represent that divide between Ben and Adrian in modern day. Spider-Man is moral, and will do the right thing no matter what Peter's reputation or consequence, whereas the Vulture is a man just trying to provide for his family, no matter the moral or ethical implications. Spider-Man and the Vulture are both right in their own way. However, that is what bleeds the conflict between them. Adrian will say that he reminds him of his uncle, as the Vulture starts tearing the warehouse down around him. Peter gets stuck in the rubble as the Vulture escapes. Everything has overwhelmed Peter. He's failed. He had the suit taken away from him, and he feels like he should have listened to Tony when he had the chance. However, Peter knows that's not who he is, not who he's brought up to be. And in this instant, instead of hearing Tony Stark's voice for motivation, he hears Uncle Ben's instead, telling him to get back up and to do what's right. Telling him no matter what the odds, Spider-Man will do the right thing, because with great power comes great responsibility, which ultimately mirrors his introduction in Civil War, which we set up nicely as well. And Peter uses this to break out of the rubble, and in determination swings after the Vulture. I just want to comment on this scene really quick. I know Tony Stark's voice is used here because ultimately he has become the new father figure for Peter throughout the MCU, but by replacing that father figure with Uncle Ben in Homecoming, it separates Tony and Peter's stories enough for them to still be involved with each other, but not on the level that everyone disagreed with when these films first came out. And I think Peter hearing Ben's voice here instead of Tony's solidifies this change. The film plays out similar to how it actually did from here on out, with Peter stopping the Vulture and finally winning. We cut to the final stages of the film, with Adrian Toomes in prison when he's approached by Mac Gargan about Spider-Man's identity, clearly setting him up to be a villain down the line. However, this time there's an extra incentive for Toomes with the Ben Parker connection, protecting Peter at all costs. We then cut to the scene with Peter, Tony and Happy like we did at the end of the actual film. Tony will once again offer him a brand new upgraded suit, impressed by what Peter was able to accomplish. Tony will tell Peter that this is what he wanted from him, to prove himself. He also offers Peter a permanent spot on the Avengers team. Peter, however, rejects it, like in the actual film, saying that Spider-Man isn't about the tech, it isn't about the machinery, it isn't about the suit, it's just about who he is, leaving Tony and Happy flabbergasted. We then cut to Peter at home, who instead of receiving the old suit back from Tony like he did in the actual film, will make a brand new homemade suit, in vein of the classic suit that you'll get during the end of No Way Home. The Spider-Man Home trilogy is usually touted as Peter Parker's origin to becoming Spider-Man in that universe. And while that's okay for this adaptation, one thing that I don't like is how it took 3 movies to accomplish, with the Great Responsibility arc only coming full circle by the end of No Way Home. However, in this version of events, I would want to end that and put a stop to that here. That's why Uncle Ben, Tony Stark and everyone had the roles that they did in this film, and now we can push past that. And having the No Way Home suit show up at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming is just a pure representation of that. The No Way Home suit represents the final form for Spider-Man in the MCU, post his Great Responsibility journey. And that's exactly why he gets that suit here. And of course, just like in the actual film, Aunt May will walk in on him and see the suit and say, "What the fuck?" Thank you very much for watching my rewrite of Spider-Man Homecoming. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit a like on it, and also comment down below what would you do if you were to make changes to Spider-Man Homecoming. This will be the least changed out of all 3 films, with Far From Home and No Way Home having absolutely dramatic changes. So you're not going to want to miss those. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you can get those videos as soon as they come out. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see my pitch for a college trilogy expanding from the end of No Way Home, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see my pitch for a Ben 10 cinematic universe. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care, and peace.